Welcome to the SKILLIFY session by Amity University Online. My name is Gaurav Agarwal, and I'll be talking about international business and globalization and the opportunities and challenges that are faced by businesses. This is an interesting topic because it has been seen during the COVID times that globalization, which had been growing for so many years, had come to a complete halt. And in fact, some countries were having no international trade during that time. So now we are going to see in today's session how things have changed during the uh, post pandemic phase. And we are also going to talk about some of the classical theories of international trade and then try to check their applicability in today's scenario. Okay, so I'll just share the presentation with you. All right, so we are going to talk about international trade and globalization, opportunities and challenges for businesses. So the learning objectives at the end of this session, you will be able to understand the applicability of the classical theories of international trade in the present day scenario. You will be able to understand how COVID impacted globalization. You will be able to discuss the opportunities for Indian businesses in foreign markets. And you will be able to understand the challenges that US businesses face in Indian market. Okay. And let us begin with the classical theory of absolute advantage. So, as you know, this theory was given by 18th century economist Adam Smith in his book, The Wealth of Nation. So, Adam Smith said that every country has absolute advantage in certain goods or services, which other countries may not have, and therefore it is more beneficial for that country to produce that good in which they have an absolute advantage. Okay, so the present day example is very simple. It's the Chinese goods that we use. Okay, and Chinese goods are exported from China to a lot of countries, and even though sometimes people complain about the quality, but the cost is always an attraction and people fall for Chinese goods. Okay, so this is just an example of absolute advantage because no other country really has been able to take that advantage of producing such a wide variety of goods at such a low cost. Okay, so this somehow relates to the theory of absolute advantage. But this theory, as you know, was countered later on, and this theory was countered by David Ricardo in his book on the principles of political economy and taxation, which was written in 1817. Ricardo said that absolute advantage may not always be possible because what will happen if one country alone has an absolute advantage in all the goods? Okay, so that means that there will be no international trade. But in reality, that does not happen. And it is the theory of comparative advantage, which is actually considered as the foundational principle for uh, most of the international trade, even today. Okay, so this theory explains the ability of a country to produce a good or service for a lower opportunity cost than other countries. Okay, so this is the difference. Now here we are considering the opportunity cost, whereas in absolute advantage we were looking at the uh, actual cost or absolute cost. Okay, now according to the theory of comparative advantage, all actors at all times can mutually benefit from the cooperation and voluntary trade. Okay, because as you can see in the table, small table which is given, on the right hand side, there are two countries, India and the USA, and there are two goods, okay, hypothetically, gold and cars. So, and the figures that are written are the comparative or opportunity cost, you can say, opportunity cost of each of the country. So, for example, you can see India has a lower opportunity cost in gold, okay, because it's just zero point 0.7 cars, okay, whereas USA has a lower opportunity cost in cars. Okay, so what this theory, this is obviously an oversimplification because there are a lot many more goods and lot many more countries in reality, but this is just to explain how countries can take advantage of lower opportunity cost. Okay, so if we talk about the present day example of these theories, then it would be like I've given one example: business services are outsourced to India from the USA. Okay, so India has been growing in terms of IT services and IT enabled services. So a lot of things we are doing in that front, whereas India is importing airline parts, for example, from the USA because they have a lower opportunity cost of producing those things. Okay, so that's the law of or theory of comparative advantage. So we can see that these theories, although they were developed much earlier, still hold the relevance, and we can draw our own conclusions if we try to understand them. Okay, now let me talk about how did COVID impact globalization. So as you know, during the COVID times, economy of most of the countries came to a halt, and in fact some of the countries, most of the countries were having a negative growth during this time. Okay, and the workforce also was not having any work, obviously. So the gross domestic product and other figures also reflected that. Then obviously there were business closures, there was food insecurity. Okay, the countries that were exporting food related items were also a little skeptical to export food and food items. And then there were supply disruptions as well, okay, because of the lockdowns and other restrictions on the movement. And in fact, in many cases, supply chains collapsed. Okay, so even for a country like the USA, where a lot of things are imported from other countries, the supply chains collapsed, and the government was looking at local manufacturers to uh, supply the goods. Okay, because at that time it was not sure for how much time this situation is going to uh, remain. Then also one impact was that the gap between nations with technological advancements and those lacking in it increased. Okay, because those who were already ahead in terms of technology, they kept working and they became better, but those who were not having the technology, they could not work on it, and therefore the gap increased. Okay, now let's quickly have a look at the opportunities for Indian businesses, and these areas that we are going to see now have been given by a study which was conducted by KPMG and Google. Okay, so according to that report, uh, travel providers, consumer brands, real estate developers, software as a service, audio, video, and gaming, select other verticals like digital classifieds and e-learnings. These are the major opportunities for Indian businesses, along with cross-border e-commerce. Okay, so cross-border e-commerce is also a good opportunity because the whole world is moving in that direction. There are companies, obviously, they are offering their products in different markets through e-commerce. Okay, so a lot of opportunities are there for Indian businesses. But as good as it sounds, international business may not be, that easy to accomplish, because there can be various kinds of challenges. Okay, so to explain that, I have taken the example of the challenges that US businesses may face in Indian markets. Okay, so this is based on a report by the US government. Okay, and they have published this report for their businesses, and they say that in India the regulatory and tariff policies are sometimes not transparent, and sometimes they are not very clearly mentioned also. Okay, so like in the US, these policies are very clearly explained. Okay, so that anyone who is going through can make out, like, this is what I am going to pay for as a tariff or something. Okay, but in India there is some kind of, you can say, uh, un, the clarity is lacking. Okay, then price sensitivity. So the US government feels that we as Indians are quite price sensitive, and we may not uh, go for the same prices that the other people are, or people of other nationalities are willing to pay. Okay, so we want more discounts, and we want uh, you know uh, lower prices than others, and we are quite sensitive. So the US government has advised the businesses there to ensure that they would be willing to sell at the price that is asked for by the Indians. Okay, so that's another challenge. And then infrastructure development needs, according to the US, India needs to develop infrastructure in various areas. Okay, so there are some requirements, and the businesses might face challenges in that regard. Okay, so this is what the US government has mentioned. Then the greater power of states. Okay, the in India, the states have greater power sometimes than the central government in certain areas. Okay, so for example, the regulation or the taxes that are being charged, they may be dependent on the states. Okay, so that is another area where the government of the US advises its businesses to be careful. Okay, but as a country, we obviously want to have more trade. We want to have more business with the US, okay, and other countries. So the Ministry of Commerce and Industries Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade has this rankings of various states on their website, which is called Ease of Doing Business. Okay, so according to this, there are various rankings which each state has. Okay, so the companies or the businesses that are investing, they may go through this and then decide which state would be preferable to them. Okay, so obviously this area is involves a lot of ifs and buts and complexities. Okay, so sometimes it may be feasible, sometimes it may not be feasible. Okay, so there are obviously a lot of variables when it comes to international businesses. Okay, so that is all from my side. Okay, so any questions? All right, thank you so much for joining, and wish you all the best.